A deepfake video of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has been removed from social media platforms. The 68-second manipulated clip shows President Zelenskyy urging Ukrainians to surrender. He is heard saying that his tenure as president has not been easy. The clip also shows Zelenskyy saying, and I quote, "Now I'm taking another hard decision to say goodbye to you. I advise you to lay down your arms and return to your families. You shouldn't die in this war." Once again, we would like to emphasize to our viewers that this is a deepfake video of the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. The heavily manipulated video shows a stiff Zelenskyy staring intently into a camera. The doctored clip was placed initially on a Ukrainian website by an unknown hacker, and that's why on Wednesday, the actual Zelenskyy appeared in a video posted to Twitter by Ukraine's defense ministry, and Zelenskyy then said that he would not surrender in the ongoing fight against Russian troops. The footage went viral on social media platforms. On Wednesday, Meta's head of security policy tweeted that Meta had in fact identified and removed this deepfake video. YouTube too has removed the video and its subsequent uploads. Twitter is also now tracking down how the footage was shared on its platform and is now taking enforcement action. Digital media forensics experts are calling the incident just the beginning of Russia's misinformation war. Considering propaganda in war is not new. From the beginning of World War I, both sides of any conflict have used propaganda to shape public opinion. At the beginning of World War I, Britain cut Germany's undersea communication cables only so that Britain could be the first one to transmit news from Europe to crucial agencies in the United States. So much so that Britain's secret organization, Wellington House, was set up in 1914 to disseminate articles only those articles which were sympathetic to Britain. All this to counter the West's German efforts as well as other efforts that were in the US centered on production of German publications. The Plotters of Wall Street was published in the year 1915. The book warned Americans against financial support for Britain, arguing that loans would never be repaid. A wide range of pamphlets, cartoons, posters and books became a part of what has now become called war propaganda. World War II also heavily relied upon the use of patriotic posters displaying masculine strength. Nationalist themes were also used to encourage recruitment and support for the war. The story of Russia's invasion of Ukraine is not any different either. The Ukraine war is also panning out through its own filter of propaganda. The Kremlin has already blocked Facebook and Instagram and restricted Twitter and banned almost all independent media outlets. In February, Twitter confirmed access to its platform had now been restricted for some people in Russia in particular, and in a tit-for-tat move, Facebook and TikTok also announced in February that they would then shut down access to Kremlin-controlled media sites, that is RT and Sputnik, in Europe. And then later in March, the British media watchdog Ofcom withdrew RT's broadcasting license in the UK. The incident has now fanned fears that the UK government could ban RT altogether to preserve the Western narrative. What's more is that the UK has launched the Call Russia initiative. Under this initiative, Russian speakers in the UK are being urged to phone ordinary citizens in the UK to counter the Kremlin's propaganda. Interestingly, to Russia, its information war is a counter-propaganda to the West. But internationally, it has launched its own media weapons. These include news channels RT to compete with Western media and bankroll pro-Russian NGOs. So that the Ukraine-Russia conflict continues, it's not just peace which has now become a casualty. Information has also become a collateral damage in this war. Now, for more insights and to decode for us this war of disinformation and propaganda, joining us now live is the Professor of International Politics, Scott Lucas, and he joins us at this hour on WION from London. Scott, thanks so much for joining us on WION. As we've been telling our viewers, the war is happening on multiple fronts as we speak. There's a new angle, or rather platform, if I may call it that, where the conflict between Russia and Ukraine is playing out. A deepfake video of the Ukrainian President Zelenskyy has now gone viral, and it has now been removed from social media platforms where he's asking Ukrainians to surrender. Tell us more about the dangers of this.
Well, as you noted, propaganda and indeed disinformation has been part of conflict actually for centuries. More recently, during World War II, during the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States, the U.S. disinformation before its attack on Iraq in 2003. But the recent context for what is happening in Ukraine has been a sustained Russian campaign of disinformation against its neighbors, not just Ukraine, but the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and Georgia for more than a decade. And indeed, this deepfake video was a fairly crude video. It was pretty easy to dismiss it. It wasn't matched up right. The colors weren't exactly right. And of course, the very real Zelenskyy was around to establish that he hadn't surrendered. What's more interesting is that Russian tactics include disinformation, which has made it into the top of your program.
Right.
The top of your program talks about Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, talking about 300 U.S. biolabs throughout the world, which is part of a Russian disinformation, a lie, that these biolabs, which are in all countries of the world, India has biological research laboratories, but that these labs are for U.S. biological warfare. So the Russians have had a great deal of success in multiple fronts, including U.S. presidential elections with disinformation in recent years. I think what's striking this time is that there's been pushback against the Russian disinformation, and that almost in real time it's being confronted and often successfully challenged.
Right, absolutely. Scott, we'll get your feedback on some other points in this cyber warfare that's currently ongoing between Russia and Ukraine. For now, we'd like to tell our viewers a little bit more about the technology that's being deployed. Now, let's tell you a little bit more. Deepfakes are the 21st century's answer to photoshopping. They are AI-generated fake videos, essentially, that use a form of artificial intelligence called deep learning to replace the likeness of one person with another in videos and other media. So how exactly are they made? Our next report explains the whole. For more insight, we still have the Professor of International Politics, Scott Lucas, live with us from London. Scott, thanks for staying on. Now, we were just telling our viewers about what this technology essentially entails. We also saw a deepfake video shared on Twitter appearing to show the Russian President Putin declaring peace. Now, this has also surfaced on social media. Now, both sides are clearly using manipulated media. But what do these videos truly reveal about the state of misinformation in this conflict?
Well, I think it shows that while propaganda and misinformation, disinformation are not new, that the speed and scale of that, well, that's part of our 21st century world. But while there's a great deal of emphasis on the potential for misleading us, and I think that's quite right, the other side of the story is getting smart about these deep fakes and being able almost in real time to sift out reality from fiction. So you now have a new type of investigative journalist. Think about the website Bellingcat, for example, that can actually take apart this type of manipulated information to try to establish whether or not it is real. I think that has really been clear in this case. That compare Russia's campaign in Syria, where for years it successfully pursued disinformation and manipulation of videos and faking of videos, and even compare over Ukraine in 2014, when Russian weapons shot down a Malaysian jetliner and the Russians tried to cover it up with manipulated video. The Russians were relatively successful here. What's been striking here is that they have not been as successful in these techniques. And indeed, when Ukraine did try it, or someone supposedly supporting Ukraine tried to do it by putting up a deep fake of Vladimir Putin, that too was, well, discounted very quickly.
Absolutely. Scott Lucas, thank you so much for all those insights, and thanks for joining us from London at this hour on WION World is One.
Thank you.